The key aspects of the speech are tax-related issues. SARS has been pouncing on detractors and keeping revenue collection high on the priority list. And of course, the minister has tried to prepare the ground on leaking bits around carbon taxes, e-tolls, base erosion, and of course, the profit shifting, essentially the measures to counteract tax avoidance through transfer pricing and international tax structuring. And of course, to talk more about tax, we are joined in the studio by Roy Naude, who is the Director of International Tax at KPMG. Good afternoon to you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Colin.
Well, in as far as tax is concerned, and when we look at the minister having to be generous in as far as social spending, how far is it stretching the fiscus?
Insofar as stretching
all the tax, the revenue of the government, yes, in as far as Treasury is concerned, yes, to make different budgetary allocations, and how far is this stretching the government to spread the money all around to the various departments and projects?
I think the key here is that they need to look at the fact that probably not to raise taxes, and that's probably what we won't expect in this particular budget, for the fact that this is an election budget. But I think the key here is that they concentrate on where they spend the money and the efficiency in how they spend the money. So typically from a KPMG perspective, what we generally would look at for our clients in these instances, and the main focus now, is how to manage your tax within the boardrooms. And these are really to pick those trends that we see internationally that may regulate future tax trends and how that would impact the economy going forward.
Then how is a corporate tax actually going to be managed? Because right now most of the companies would actually raise the bar in as far as the production costs are concerned, and especially on the supply side, would there be some leniency in as far as corporate tax is concerned?
I think what we've seen in the last year or two at least is that there has been appointed the Davis Tax Committee, which would investigate streamlining our existing tax system. So I think the big thing at this stage is that taxpayers are given certainty as to how their tax bill is determined with reference to the legislation. The legislation at this stage is complex, and more often than not the talk within the boardroom is just to get it right. On the other part, we've got policies, international policies on BEPS, which seeks to regulate certain specific areas internationally, one of which we've already seen is the transfer pricing focus thereon, and also the interest deductions within certain groups of companies, specifically cross-border. But in order, from a marginal tax perspective on the company rate, currently 28%, we don't expect that there would be an increase or a lowering in that rate, of course. But essentially the focus would be on focusing on those type of tax schemes that revenue considers to erode the base, and that is where the BEPS report particularly will be of assistance to them.
Tax avoidance has actually been eroding revenue for the government, and SARS has actually been tackling those who are trying to avoid it. This time, do you think SARS is actually on point in as far as tracking the detractors?
I very much think so, Colin. Why I say that is that we have really been guided by international tax practices on where we take our revenue or our legislation. And in that instance, again, with reference to the BEPS report, we've seen that the focus is on transfer pricing, which is only one of the 7 key areas that they are considering, hybrid debt financing instruments. So our revenue authorities, we've seen, and SARS particularly, have been implementing certain legislation in the last year or so, or 2 years, that actually addresses some of these 7 key areas that the BEPS reports have pointed out. So I very much so think that our revenue authorities are on top of it. The question is, the implementation thereof, and in order to give taxpayers certainty, specifically with reference, I think something that immediately comes to mind is the transfer pricing. We need to get certainty around transfer pricing on how debt financing is treated on a local level where we receive cross-border financing.
All right, we're speaking to Roy Naude. Of course, he is the Director of International Tax at KPMG. Thank you very much for talking.